Good evening, everybody. Happy Thursday. This is the 13th of May. Yeah, 7 p.m. And hello to all those who have joined the live stream, and hi to those watching the recording. Thank you very much. Hope you had a good day and you're enjoying our nice warm weather. It's been fun this last week preparing for the show. We've got Cheryl Bennett, who's a longtime friend and colleague. We worked together for quite a while on the Sacramento County Disability Advisory Commission. Cheryl was staff for the county, and I was a community representative dealing with issues countywide. So that was really fun, and we're going to talk about some of that. Also, Cheryl was instrumental in getting a community garden going in Citrus Heights. So that's pretty cool. We'll talk about that also. But before we launch into our discussion tonight, let's go ahead and take a look at an update. All right, update for today. The update for today is the new CDC guidelines that came out nationally in regards to if you're fully vaccinated. That means with either the Pfizer or the Moderna, 2 vaccines, 2 weeks waiting period, or with the J&J vaccine, it's 1 vaccine, 2 weeks waiting period, that you can go without a mask, both outside and indoors. So we're gonna talk about that a little bit tonight with Cheryl and get a perspective from disability, and not just that, but for everyone, because we all have opinions on this, and I'm gonna share mine, and Cheryl, I'm sure, will share hers. So without waiting any longer, let's say hello to Cheryl.
Hi.
Hey Cheryl, welcome. How are
Thank
you?
you.
How are you this evening?
I'm great. I'm really happy to be here, Chris.
Oh, I'm happy to have you on. We've known each other for, let's see, when did I join the commission? It must have been
Hmm.
a good, 10 years ago, easy.
Oh, better than that, I think.
You think
I
so?
want to say like 2008,
Could be 8,
2007,
maybe
2008.
2009 at the latest, I would think. At the latest. Because I was on it for quite some time.
You were, and you're being modest about your participation. You didn't mention that you had been chair for 2 terms and
Yeah,
chair of the housing subcommittee for several years.
quite a long time. Yeah.
And we
Yeah, it
did great
was.
work together.
And it was. We had a lot of fun. We did a lot of good work. I learned so much. I still think back on that project when we were redesigning our bylaws. I learned a lot. I mean, going through the Robert's Rules of Order and
Mm-hmm.
trying to play out various scenarios so that, because we had a situation where there were some loopholes and gaps,
Right.
and we were trying to see how we could, close those up. So it was a lot of fun. It was a little subcommittee we were on. That was fun.
Yeah, that was good stuff.
Learned a lot. And I learned a lot simply about the legal side of disability with the Americans with Disability Act. And then we've got California. There's a California
Fair Employment and Housing Act,
Fair Employment.
FEH. Yeah.
Yep. Fair Employment and Housing Act. There was just a lot to learn. And honestly, prior to my going to work for Resources for Independent Living, I really hadn't paid any attention to it. Things that I take for granted, I discovered were a real obstacle for a lot of people in order to participate in our culture, in our society equally, right?
Right.
So that was a big eye opener for me.
Yeah, me too. I didn't before I came to the county. I'd been involved in a number of civil rights issues and topics, but I didn't really know much about the ADA until I started working at the county in the disability compliance office, and I was just suddenly immersed in it. And I attended my first DAC meeting in December of 2000.
Yeah, we
And
lovingly call it the DAC, the Disability Advisory
yeah, the
Commission.
disability,
The DAC.
bad,
We call it,
bad.
so if we say DAC, that's what we're talking about, the DAC.
Right. So, but
So
we're not supposed to use acronyms in government. So bad me, shame, shame, shame. Slap on the wrist.
we're bad at that. And we just assume everyone knows what that means, right?
Right.
I've never asked you this, and it just dawned on me that a lot of people, such as myself, don't think about it until they come in contact with the issue, which has to do with a lot of issues. We just
Right.
go about our business kind of with blinders on, and we don't see that stuff. So I'm curious, when you started in the department that you're in with disability stuff, was that an accident? Was that by choice? Where's your connection with disability rights?
It was a very lucky accident. I actually was a temp worker with the county, and I was serving as the executive secretary for the director of HR. And the Disability Compliance Office was organizationally located there and also physically located there, and they didn't have any clerical staff. So a whole bunch of different people were helping out. I was just kind of a floater thing. So some of that came my way, and I really liked it. And somebody handed me a cassette tape one day and said, "Do you have any experience with creating meeting minutes?" And I said, "No, but I'm pretty well versed in creating all kinds of documents." And they said, "Okay, well, take your shot at transcribing meeting minutes from this recording of the Disability Advisory Commission meeting." And so I put my headphones on and I'm listening, and I'm like, wow, this is an amazing group. And at the time, the DAC was 17 members strong.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And we didn't have ex officio department head members then. We had all community members. We rarely had vacancies.
That was the first iteration, because there was a second iteration, right?
No.
Wasn't the DAC
change happened in 87.
But there was right. I'm saying, so there was the DAC, and then it was on hiatus for a while. And then it became the DAC again. And
that was before I came on.
That was before you came in.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That was I think in 87.
Okay.
They dissolved it, and so yeah.
Wow. Hey, I want to welcome someone that just popped on. Welcome. Please send us a chat and let us know who you are so we can say hello. So that's interesting, Cheryl. So that was before that you started. Okay. So you weren't there for that big brouhaha and all that stuff.
No.
Okay.
I missed all that.
Okay.
So. But that's okay, because there was plenty of drama.
Oh, there was.
I didn't miss out on any.
There
drama.
was always plenty of drama. One of the things that, for me, getting involved in disability advocacy and coming from the social justice perspective that I have, I thought kind of everyone thought the same. And I soon discovered that there were other viewpoints that didn't always mesh with what I thought were socially responsible, progressive values. I'd say the majority of people on the commission were socially progressive, but every once in a while we would get someone that was very conservative, and locked horns a couple of times. That's always interesting.
Yeah.
And they didn't stay very long because we really were trying to move things forward. But I enjoyed it. And I was very appreciative when I retired. I also retired from the commission. Probably didn't have to. But I just wanted to make a clean break from everything. It was a very emotional time for me.
It was. I remember.
Yeah. But I think about it, and it's still on, believe it or not, the full DAC meetings and all the subcommittees are still on my calendar, and I still get alerts. So if I ever decide to go back and visit, it could happen. You never know.
You would be most welcome there, sir.
The ghost of Christmas past. So welcome, everyone. This is Cheryl Bennett. She is a long friend. We've got a couple more people that are popping on. So this is how so as it goes, people sort of, trickle on. And as they do, I like to welcome them. And if they, to put something in the chat to say hello, I can say hello by name. And Hopefully this is dialogue time. So if anything we talk about, you have a question about, feel free to pop it into the chat, and we'll do our best to see what we can say about that. Yeah. So how many members are on the DAC right now?
Right now we're at, well, we just added 2 more. So we're at 7, 8. We're at 8.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Actually, right now,
Yeah,
for
it's
right
an
now,
improvement.
it's
And
pretty
we've got a
good.
couple people in the queue. One of them works for paratransit, is the current director of paratransit. So it'll be nice to have that perspective.
Mm-hmm. And paratransit, for people that don't know, is an accessible vehicle for people to get around places that cannot access the bus or the light rail. There've been a lot of improvements, right, in public transportation for people with disabilities to be able to access buses and light rail, but it doesn't work for everybody. And paratransit, at least they used to, and I don't think they're called paratransit anymore, but it was a curb to curb service. So instead of like on a bus, they'd let you off at a bus stop, then you've got to travel to where you're going. Paratransit would drop you off really close, right? So
Right.
it's a great service. It's a great service.
And you're correct. They're not paratransit anymore in Sacramento. They're RT Go.
RT Go.
Yeah.
Same. Okay. And if people are interested, imagine you could go to Regional Transit's website and there's something on it there,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So what kind of things do you all work on?
Our big project so far this year, not surprisingly, has been around COVID stuff. We became concerned late last year. We were having a lot of anecdotal reports, nothing specific, and nothing necessarily specific to this community. It was happening everywhere. That people with disabilities were finding significant barriers in the COVID testing process.
Like, for instance?
For instance, a lot of the early pop-ups were all drive-through. So we began asking the question, what do you do for people who don't drive? Because many people with disabilities do not drive. We wanted to make sure that they would vaccinate somebody who came in an Uber with an unknown third party, or in a cab, or what if they walked up? And their initial answer was, well, we have these, we do have testing sites, and they were, most of them were operating just like one afternoon a week. Okay. And they were scattered all over town. So their initial response was, well, that we would tell them to go to one of the testing sites out in the community. Like, oh, so they think they have COVID and they walk up to your site and you're going to put them on a bus and send them across town? So we got that straightened out, and as they added more sites, it got a little better. We had to make sure that every site had a telephone contact, because initially a lot of them only had email contact. Well, if you are a person who's blind, you may not use email, or if you're a person with low income, you may not have technology.
Right.
The library is closed. You can't get to the library to use the computers in the library. So, there has to be a telephone option for people who don't have a smartphone or a computer, or for whatever reason, don't use email.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that was always a big concern. We were working with emergency preparedness, how to get a hold of people in an emergency that don't have access to a lot of stuff, One of the things I was reading, this is a little bit of an aside, one of the things that is in the works is to prepare driver's licenses and IDs that will show up on your smartphone. So you don't have to carry something on your person. It's on your phone. And
interesting.
It is, and I'm not opposed to it. I'd be probably more in favor of it if the use of smartphones was more pervasive in our society, so that people that don't have one could not participate. So there would still have to be some sort of a hard copy backup, right? But for a lot of people, it should be just far more convenient to do something like that. But anyway, that's technology. I think has done a great thing in providing greater access for people with disabilities, because it can do so much.
It's been huge for the deaf community.
Oh, speech to text.
Yes.
Yeah, all that stuff has just been awesome.
Video sign language interpreting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's been huge. But when it comes to COVID, um, there's we were talking before the show started about uh, people who are deaf or hard of hearing, like myself. There are some people that I have a hard time understanding what they're saying. If I can see their face, I do some sort of a pseudo quasi lip reading thing, right? And it helps me understand what they're saying because I'm matching what I hear with what I see, and it's like, okay, I can get it. But if you're wearing a mask, that's impossible, right? I have to work a lot harder to understand. And if I was completely deaf, I wouldn't. There's no cues or clues or anything as to what I'm saying. So has that discussion percolated up?
Yeah, that was actually another one of the items on our to-do list for Department of Health Services, is to make sure that staff had available either the masks that have a clear panel in front so you can see the lips, or that they were wearing the face shields.
The face shields.
Yeah, which are not as effective, but just in that situation, after they were done communicating with the person who was reading lips, they could go back to wearing the mask.
Put the mask back on.
Right.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes all kinds of sense. And of course, one of the accommodations, because no one could meet in face to face for the longest time, where these commissions and organizations were meeting on Zoom. And of course, you don't have to wear, unless your computer has a virus, you don't have to wear a face mask.
That's something I miss about you, Chris, your dad jokes.
Really? You're probably the only person that's missing.
Oh, I bet I'm not.
Yeah, probably not. I take the philosophy of life is that life is hard. Life is tough. There's a lot of sad moments in life, but if I can find any amount of levity, even if it's something that people will groan at, I mean, they kind of laugh at it. I'll find it. If I can find something to laugh at, even in the direst of situations, I'll try to do so. Probably for as much for my mental health as anything,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Agree.
Yeah. So one of the things, we're going to get into the weeds a little bit. There's this thing called the Brown Act. We had to be really careful about that. You have to notify people that the meeting's coming. People from the public have to be able to participate. But then COVID hit, you couldn't meet in public. So how did they handle the Brown Act?
I believe it was in late last year, maybe in October, November. Governor Brown, in one of his Governor Brown, dear God.
That dates you. Well, you know what? Okay, so let me just first of all, let's just say hi to Uli. Hey, Uli, welcome for joining us tonight. Loved the show last night, by the way. Had a blast. Glad you're here with us. You'll play. I'll catch you up just a second. We're talking about issues of disability and physical access, and that's what we're all about tonight. So, anyway, where were we? We were talking about.
I forgot the question you asked me.
Yeah, I forgot the question I asked you too. That's what happens with me. But it'll come back to it was COVID related. It had with the Brown Act. It had to do with the Brown Act. Yeah. How do you handle? So if you can't, so legally you have to post it in advance. You have to have it in a space that is physically accessible. The public has to be able to be there, right?
Right.
Now you've got COVID. Now you're not meeting in place. Now you're meeting on Zoom. How do you go about handling all that?
So the governor issued an emergency proclamation that suspended the prohibition of meeting by teleconference. And we still have to do the proper notice and everything. But We just publish the Zoom link and the telephone access, and we're good.
That's awesome. For years, people were requesting that, right? Because especially when it comes to people with disabilities, they can't always get to places.
Exactly.
They might be having a bad day. Um, their paratransit ride might not have shown up, or it's late, or and
Yeah.
they want to participate. And the Brown Act was a barrier. So this is actually, I hope, going forward, that they take a hard look at that, and
There is some
modify
legislation.
that.
There is some legislation brewing, and the current version calls on us to provide all three methods, by computer, by telephone, and in person.
Oh,
So,
nice.
well, that sounds great, but it's also sounds like one of those things that comes down from the state that's expensive to implement, and they just push it down on the counties and cities, and
Um,
so like it wouldn't be hard for us, because I work at the main building there at 700H, and we have lots of resources. We have a room that's set up for technology, and so on and so forth, where the press comes next to the board of
mhm.
supervisors chambers. But what about county employees in less civilized locations? Or
They were-
what about our community planning advisory councils that
yeah,
meet, in communities all over Sacramento County in different
right,
kinds of meeting rooms and spaces, and that almost certainly don't have that kind of technology. So,
right.
how are we
Yeah,
going to fund that? And so that's why the bill is currently in suspense, because somebody started raising the issues that like who's
about
paying
money.
for this?
The thing about, when I was dealing with the legislature, if we were trying to get a bill through and it had a significant dollar figure attached to it, it would go into suspense. And then we had to work like crazy to get it out. And it can die there. It can just
Yeah.
stay in there and just die. Hey, Ruben, welcome. Um, Thanks for the show last night. I had a lot of fun. We're talking about issues of disability and access tonight, just to catch you up a little bit. Yeah, so I get it. The state's done a lot of things where they've pushed the financial burden onto the counties,
Yeah.
and the counties are strapped. And unfortunately, Sacramento County, I hate to say this, has been sued multiple times. And
True.
it's not it could be a wealthy county, but it's not a wealthy county. And so a lot of the services that we want to be funded simply just can't find the money there. So that's kind of sad. But that's, it's encouraging that the people are at least thinking about it. And that's better than it's been, because usually people with disabilities are out of sight, out of mind, right?
Yep.
So that's a plus. That's a plus. So one of the things that you focused on that people might not be aware of is something called a reasonable accommodation. So if you are an employee and the ADA puts it this way, can you perform the job with or without a reasonable accommodation? And some people, if they have a disability, whatever, it could be physical, it could be mental or otherwise, can do a job if they have an accommodation to do the job. And the employer is, unless it's cost prohibitive, the employer is beholden to do that. And I think part of your job was actually to brainstorm solutions for people who worked at the county to find those reasonable accommodations. Is that part of your
Yes.
job? Yeah.
Yes. Sometimes, yes.
And did you find that hard to do, or was that fairly easy?
The hard part was breaking through resistance and, stereotypical thinking.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, there's just a lot of folks that just think you should just be quiet, do your job, don't ask for
Yeah.
anything special.
Yeah.
And that's actually, maybe this is a good time to bring up my little graphic, and we can talk
Sure. Yeah.
about.
Let's do that.
All right. Share.
This is a learning experience for all of us. We worked on this the other night. Is it working?
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Never say uh-oh, right?
Well, I say uh-oh. You never know. The thing about live, we can plan these things and work them out. And then when we go live, Murphy's Law
I am.
takes over and never turns out the way you think it's going to turn out. And I just lost Cheryl completely. So we'll just wait for her to come back. Um, you push the wrong button and you go bye-bye. I remember my very first show. Here she comes back. Welcome back. Welcome back. I was about to tell people my very first show. I was really, really nervous. I get to the end of it and I'd created this, what I thought was a nice little 19-second exit video, right? And I was so excited people were going to see it for the very first time. And instead of push play, I pushed end broadcast. So I'm like, well, I guess they'll see it next week, and it's really easy to push so easy to push the wrong button.
Okay, I don't know why it's not letting me have it.
Oh, because computers can be persnickety.
There we go.
Yay.
Okay,
It's
so
graphic time.
it's graphic time. So when you're talking about treating people with disabilities equally, a lot of people think, to achieve justice, we just treat everybody the same, right? That's just common sense. I just treat everybody the same,
Right.
and it's all good, right?
Right.
Well, here's the flaw in that thinking. The first square shows.
No, we don't. So I don't see it yet.
Oh,
that's okay. Yeah, I've got to see it here so I can pop it onto the screen.
Okay, I don't know why it's not. Oh.
It's teamwork here. Oh, the sirens are going off.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I know. That's a common thing downtown. It's sad to hear it. There they go. And I don't know what, we have some senior housing down here. We've got all kinds of stuff, and you just never know what's going on. It really says, instead of saying uh-oh, just say oh.
Good one.
Leave the off. Just say oh. Oh. Do you I can try to talk you through it if you'd like.
Okay. So
you push share.
Well, I'm seeing this. All right.
There it is. There's something. Oh, we're going to get the mirrored effect.
No.
Yeah, so
okay.
That ain't it.
Stop sharing.
If the graphic's a picture, you can drag it to the top of your browser and create a tab and then share it from there.
It's a PowerPoint file, but I will try that. Okay. Now.
And then you just share the tab.
How do I share a tab?
So you go to share screen, and then you've got 3 choices: entire screen,
Chrome
window,
tab.
or Chrome tab. Yes, ma'am. There it is. And let's just get it up here real quick. Okay, so we've got equality, equity, and justice.
Right. So back to the notion of treating everybody the same. We have 3 young folks here that are standing outside of a fence trying to watch a soccer game. And in order to see over the fence, everybody's standing on a box, and everybody has one box. They're all being treated equally. But Two of the children are much taller than the third child, who is too short to see over the fence. So he doesn't get to participate, but he's being treated equally.
Right.
The next slide shows, and I like this one because it shows that accommodations can actually be very simple, and it can involve using what you already have. So in the next slide, we still have 3 boxes and 3 kids, but the boxes have been rearranged so that they create the appropriate height level for everyone to see across the fence. So the tall kid on the left isn't standing on a box anymore, but he can still see over the fence. The middle-sized kid only has 1 box, but he can still see over the fence. And the smaller child is now standing on 2 boxes stacked up on each other.
But you know,
So,
when we do that, a lot of people say that's not fair. He's getting more than me, right?
right. It's amazing, but you still hear a lot of that stuff. Why do
Sure
those
do.
people, why are we doing all this for those people?
Right.
So they can participate in life like everybody else,
Well, that's the goal, right?
right? But the third image says justice. And instead of a wooden fence that no one can see through, we have a chain link fence that everyone can see through, and nobody needs a box to stand on. So if we think ahead as to what people's needs are, everyone's needs, we can eliminate the barriers before we put them in through good design.
Design. You know, that's something that was an interesting committee, the physical access committee, and because it was all about design. You know,
Yes.
it's about that accessible space, designing an accessible space. I remember there was a TED talk that I was watching. There's a woman, and that was her thing. She designed space for equal access, and she talked about the height of chairs. She talked about all kinds of stuff that people don't even think about that make a difference as far as people being able to utilize, various things. That was great. That was a great graphic, Cheryl. Thanks for sharing that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I've got some other
it-
photos too
well,
about
I was
schools.
just going to ask you, use that? Do you use that in training people in regards to?
I do. That's one of the slides from my trainings. Yeah.
Cool.
So, and that's the favorite part of my job is when I go out and get to train county employees. And the best days are when somebody says to me afterwards, I never thought of it that way before.
Yeah, isn't that true? Yeah. I remember a lot of times when we were working on the commission, we'd be talking about something, we'd be sharing ideas, and we would have county executives participate. I think it was like every year or so there were 3 that were designated by the county exec to sit on the commission.
Actually, there were 4, but one never showed up.
Oh, that's why I only remember 3. Well, we won't talk about the one, but they
Well,
would bring.
I think actually he retired and they never replaced him.
Oh, that's probably wise, but they would bring problems, or they would bring situations that they're working on and to ask for input, and we would be able to suggest things that they'd never thought of, because we had such a diverse group of people on the commission with various disabilities, providing that wisdom for making whatever that is, if they're building a new clinic or if they're doing whatever it is, that it's set up from the get-go so that it's accessible for everybody.
Right.
And that was a lot of fun.
Right.
So what else do you have for us?
I'm not getting this to come up, but I had some pictures of like detectable warnings and audible pedestrian signals, and but we can talk about those a little bit.
Yeah, let's talk about
those yellow
those.
tiles that you see on street corners with the bumps.
Those are awfully irritating.
Yeah, or you're coming out of Walmart and there they are in the front of the store, and you're with your shopping cart. That's just so annoying, right?
It is annoying.
So what are those for?
They're there for a reason, and
They're
got a
there
really
for a
fun.
reason.
They got a really fun name. When I learned what the name of those things were, I use it all the time. They're called truncated domes.
Truncated domes.
Truncated
Yep.
domes.
That's what they're called.
That's what they're called. And what are they there for?
So they're used by people who are blind to, if they are totally blind, they're using the bumps and the sound difference, because the tile sounds different to somebody tapping a cane on the sidewalk a white cane used by the blind. It's when they hit the tile, if it's constructed properly, it has hollow space underneath, and so it makes a pop like a drum, which sounds completely different from the dull sidewalk. They know at that point that they've arrived at an intersection, and they will be either looking for the pedestrian signal, the push button, or if there isn't one, they will be relying on the sounds of cross traffic to know when to cross the street. If they have some vision, the reason that they're ideally bright yellow is that's the most visible color from a distance. So a person with low vision could orient themselves to that. They wouldn't necessarily need the truncated dome part. But the yellow color would help them orient themselves properly to get to the intersection.
Right. And oftentimes we'll see yellow stripes on stairs.
Yes.
And that's so people with low vision can see that there's stairs so they don't trip. Right. Yep. And that's what that's all about. And it's funny that one of the things when I was making brochures, we always had to think about contrast, right? So certain colors don't work well together. And if you're using a colored font against a certain colored background, you can't read it, you can't discriminate against it. And so that's a whole field all by itself to make sure that our visual world is colored in such a way so that everyone, as much as possible, can see what's going on, even if they've got some type of a vision obstacle barrier. So it's really important. I remember we got in one big discussion. Someone wanted to paint something. I don't know. I think it was red, and our physical access chair at the time, he was vehement that no, it has to be yellow, and and not just any yellow, but a certain color of yellow.
Yes, it's called federal yellow.
Federal yellow.
And he was actually successful in getting Sacramento County to adopt that into their design guidelines, that all detectable warning tiles in Sacramento County or truncated domes will be federal yellow.
Federal yellow.
But there's still people that get away with it. There's a shopping center here in Citrus Heights where I live that has brick walkways. And they thought they'd be cute and matchy and make the detectable warning tiles brick red.
Oh,
so
dear.
You can't distinguish them from the rest of the walkway. And then I don't know if you've noticed, but around the Golden One Center,
okay,
all of the truncated domes around the Golden One Center are silver.
Oh, they are.
They blend right into the sidewalk. They look gray like the sidewalk.
Well, I wonder how they got away with that.
Money, money talks, and it.
Well, I
and
guess so,
I'm sure you remember who was the ADA coordinator for the city. He was at the time. He was quite involved in all of that, and
yeah,
I'm baffled how he let that slip by.
I don't know. So I want to take a moment to say hello to Victor. Hey, Victor. And Uli says hello to Victor also. Along with the truncated domes and being visual, I saw a photograph. It was a road that the Romans had built. And every so often you'd see a piece of crystal that they had embedded in the road because you could see it at night. You could see where the road was at night because it would reflect the moon. Right. So
brilliant.
Yeah. It's amazing what people were thinking about thousands of years ago. Right.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. You can't do that, Victor. Yeah. Yeah. So, that placards are a whole nother story. We fought with placards all the time in Sacramento. And some people hate them because they can't find a parking place, but they are absolutely, necessary for people. And if you don't actually need one and you use one, that is a criminal offense.
So here's the thing, though. There's a lot of misperception about who needs one.
Oh, true. That's true.
And a lot of times, in fact, this also comes up in my trainings. uh, those specially marked spaces that are usually close to the entrance.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
there's videos like this out all over Facebook, social media, whatever. You see somebody pull up into one of those spaces,
It's got the
and
blue. It's got the
it's got
wheelchair
the
user, and
right. It's got the blue sign and the cross hatch area. The
right,
loading zone, no parking, and so on and so forth. And somebody parks there, and then they get out of their vehicle and they walk into the store. How dare they? And some busybody
right,
will be yelling at them and
right.
or cursing them out or whatever. And well, you don't know why they have that. And one of the best examples that I like to use is I know a woman who does not have a disability, but she has a placard because she has two small children with autism.
Yep.
And literally the difference between, that extra 200 yards from the parking lot, that extra minute or two could make the difference onto whether or not she gets her grocery shopping done, because it's only a matter of time before one or both of her children become overstimulated.
Right.
So her ability to park close and get in and out quickly with her children with autism is why she has a placard, and
It's a big deal.
she gets
And
screamed at and hollered at and put down all the time in public because she doesn't appear
to
to be
have
a
a
person with a
disability.
disability.
And she's not the person with the disability; it's her children.
Right.
And unfortunately, there's a huge black market for placards. People buy them to use them illegally. They've arrested people who worked for the DMV that would, sell them on the side. Yeah, it's been a real problem, and
Yeah, their DMV is also kind of careless with them.
kind of careless. Yeah,
My mother had one toward the end of her life, and after she passed, they sent her another one.
yeah,
I was honest, I destroyed it, but I could have used it. I
yeah.
mean,
Absolutely, you could have. I mean, we hear stories all the time of uh, children receiving social security checks from a deceased parent and
right.
cashing them
Yeah.
for years, which is always fun when they get caught because they got to pay it all back. But yikes, right?
Yeah, which is hard to do from jail.
Which is hard to do from jail. But if you need one, you need one. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, there are people who they don't want to admit they have a disability. They could use something like that, but they won't do it because I don't know why, but they have a barrier to access whatever it is that they could. It's like someone who is food insecure and
Hmm.
they qualify for CalFresh, but they won't do it out of personal pride. They're like,
Mhm.
I'm not going to accept welfare. Okay, well then
Right.
starve. But I'm going to starve. It's like that makes no sense to me. I don't understand it. Someone might be able to explain it to me, but I don't understand it. If you need it, that's what it's there for. We have our society is not perfect, but we do have some things in place to help when the time comes.
Well, I
Right?
think that's been stigmatized and still
Yeah,
is
it
being
kind of has.
stigmatized.
One of the things
Yeah.
they're saying about mental health with is that because of COVID, mental health doesn't have the same stigma that it had because more people are experiencing it and being honest about it because of being isolated and all these other
Mhm.
concerns that people have.
Unfortunately, what we're running up against, though, is an extreme lack of resources, mental health resources.
Well, I thought we
Yeah.
had Prop 63. Wasn't that supposed to pay for everything in California?
Well, but even someone like me I have really good insurance through the county, but it's almost impossible to find a provider right now.
Oh, that's the problem, the provider.
It's really, really hard. I mean,
Hmm.
you have to call like 10, 15 people and wait for them to call you back, and most of them are full. They have full caseloads and they're not taking new clients. And um so yeah, I have the resources, but they're not I'm supposed to have the resources, but they're not available to me.
That's a
So
resource that, yeah, and you got no control over that.
right. And my scenario is the best case scenario. I have really good health insurance, and
Right,
I still have difficulty accessing mental health services.
right. Wow. That's something that people don't think about. I mean, that didn't come to my mind right off the bat, but that's absolutely crucial. I mean, you may have all the resources in the world to get a service, but if there's no one out there to provide the service, then you're still not going to get the service. Wow.
And for some reason lately, insurance companies seem to be really denying a lot of stuff.
Well, that they're in business to
Um,
make money. They're not,
yeah,
you
no,
know,
yeah, they're not in business to help us.
yeah. That's why it's not always popular, but having worked in the disability community and known my mentor Francis Gracechild as long as I did, I was a staunch single payer advocate.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think of it as Medicare for all kind of a thing. Single payer is a little different than Medicare for all, but still. Um, Victor writes, when I worked in this zip, two of my colleagues dispersed from the workroom floor. One was suspected of forwarding disability checks to her home. Yeah, that's not good. People
No.
and you know what? They will get caught. I mean, it may take a while, but they will get caught. And when they
Mm-hmm.
do, they have to pay it all back. Because it's actually the people's money. If it's Medi-Cal, it's the people's money, and if it's Medicare, it's the person's money that is paid into the system.
The
So
thing is, though, that the likelihood is that money's not coming back. I mean, it's spent. The
yeah,
person is now in legal trouble. They've
you
probably
can't afford
lost
to
their
pay it.
job
Your
if they
money's
had
gone.
one,
Yeah, that's true.
you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
They're
So
going to jail probably, and then they're going to have trouble getting a job when they
that's
get out. I
right.
mean, that
Yeah.
money's not coming back.
So before we get too much further in here, one of the things, and I mentioned it at the top of the hour, that you were instrumental in organizing a community garden in Citrus Heights that's physically accessible.
Yes.
Have you been able to find some photos
Yeah, I
of that for us?
went out
Yeah,
this morning and took some photos.
cool. Let's take a look at those.
So let's see.
And we also have a video queued up. I don't know that we're going to get to it tonight. There's a uh, comedian.
You know
Uh,
what, Chris? We've got 10 minutes left, and I'd
okay,
almost rather take another session to showcase the garden. I mean, there's a
okay,
whole
we'll do
lot we
that.
could talk about, and I don't want
We'll
to
do that.
shortchange the garden.
That's okay. We'll do that. We'll set that up for a future time, and we'll talk about that accessible garden because I think that's really important. You know, if it's a community garden, then all the community should be able to work it. And
Exactly. And
right?
there's
Yeah.
actually quite a story about how we got there, because
Oh,
we
cool.
were met with a lot of resistance.
Oh, I'll bet. Yeah, I'll bet.
And I was very surprised to learn that even a community garden can be political. It was very
How about that?
political. So
So let's take these last few minutes then to you want to take a look at that video or is it
yeah,
okay? It's a
yeah.
9.5 minute video, so obviously we're not going to look at all of it, but let's just take a look a little bit here. Now I've got to share my screen properly. Let's see how I do. There we are.
Ladies and gentlemen, I grew up in a very small country town in Victoria. I had a very normal, low-key kind of upbringing. I went to school, I hung out with my friends, I fought with my younger sisters. It's all very normal. And when I was 15, a member of my local community approached my parents and wanted to nominate me for a Community Achievement Award. And my parents said, that's really nice, but there's kind of one glaring problem with that. She hasn't actually achieved anything. Yeah. And they were right. I went to school, I got good marks, I had a very low key after school job in my mum's hairdressing salon, and I spent a lot of time watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Dawson's Creek. Yeah, I know, what a contradiction. But they were right. I wasn't doing anything that was out of the ordinary at all. I wasn't doing anything that could be considered an achievement if you took disability out of the equation. Years later, I was on my second teaching round in a Melbourne high school, and I was about 20 minutes into a Year 11 legal studies class when this boy put up his hand and said, "Hey, miss, when are you going to start doing your speech?" And I said, what speech? I'd been talking to them about defamation law for a good 20 minutes. And he said, like your motivational speaking. When people in wheelchairs come to school, they usually say, like, inspirational stuff. It's usually in the big hall. And that's when it dawned on me. This kid had only ever experienced disabled people as objects of inspiration. We are not, to this kid, and it's not his fault. I mean, that's true for many of us. For lots of us, disabled people are not our teachers or our doctors or our manicurists. We're not real people. We are there to inspire. And in fact, I'm sitting on this stage looking like I do in this wheelchair, and you are probably kind of expecting me to inspire you, right? Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid I'm going to disappoint you dramatically. I'm not here to inspire you. I'm here to tell you that we have been lied to about disability. Yeah, we've been sold the lie that disability is a bad thing. Capital B, capital T. It's a bad thing. And to live with disability makes you exceptional. It's not a bad thing. And it doesn't make you exceptional. And in the past few years, we've been able to propagate this lie even further via social media. You may have seen images like this one. The only disability in life is a bad attitude. Or this one. Your excuse is invalid, indeed. Or this one. Before you quit, try. Yeah. These are just a couple of examples, but there are a lot of these images out there. You might have seen the little girl with no hands drawing a picture with a pencil held in her mouth. You might have seen a child running on carbon fibre prosthetic legs. And these images, there are lots of them out there. They are what we call inspiration porn. And I use the term porn deliberately because they objectify one group of people for the benefit of another group of people. So in this case, we're objectifying disabled people for the benefit of non-disabled people. The purpose of these images is to inspire you, to motivate you, so that we can look at them and think, well, however bad my life is, it could be worse. I could be that person. But what if you are that person? I've lost count of the number of times that I've been approached by strangers wanting to tell me that they think I'm brave or inspirational. And this was long before my work had any kind of public profile. They were just kind of congratulating me for managing to get up in the morning and remember my own name. And it is objectifying. These images objectify disabled people for the benefit of non-disabled people. They are there so that you can look at them and think that things aren't so bad for you, to put your worries into perspective.
That's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah.
But I've hit my 20-year mark now in the Disability Compliance Office, and as interesting as this, thank you. It's been quite a journey. As fascinating as it has been for me to learn about people with disabilities, it's been equally fascinating for me to learn about non-disabled people and how they treat people with disabilities, or their attitudes and stereotypes about people with disabilities.
Yeah.
And Stella in the video there, she was absolutely right. I worked side by side with a woman in a wheelchair for the better part of my county career. And because we worked closely in a small office, we became friends, and we would go places together, go to lunch or whatever. And people would invariably, we'd be sitting at lunch, and I would place my order, and then they would say, "And what is she having?" It's like, she's sitting down. It doesn't mean she can't think, speak,
right.
Make a decision. And even our colleagues, this was kind of a running joke between us. We worked in the office of the director of HR, so we dressed professionally every day. And we would go out or go around the building, and people would always come running up to her and saying, "Oh, hi! Oh, you look so great. You always look so great. You just look so put together. Kathleen, you just look so great." And I'd be standing there like, the person would walk away, and she and I would laugh, turn to each other and laugh. I'm like, do I look okay today, Kathleen? She's like, yeah, you look great too. Sure. It's like there was she's like, what was she supposed to dress like a bag lady or something?
Right.
Because she was in a wheelchair. It was like shocking to people that she would be dressed like a professional because she used a wheelchair.
I worked with a guy that was a wheelchair user, and we were going to lunch one day, and this guy comes up to him with, I guess, his leftovers, and he said, "Hi, this is for you." And he's like, I don't need that. I'm going to lunch. And it was like,
Oh
wow.
my gosh.
Well, the weirdest one though is when the lady came up and wanted to pray for him that God would heal him so that he could walk. He didn't. That was wow.
Wow.
That was a wow experience.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So, so Victor brings up something that if you are a disability advocate, and you work in that community, you deal with this all the time. People that are living solely on Social Security income and state disability insurance.
Yeah.
It's not, SDI is different. It's SSDI, state supplemental disability insurance.
Right.
And
but still, it's woefully inadequate.
It's at the poverty level.
It's below poverty level, technically.
I think it still might be. I mean, we worked really, really hard to try to get increases to the state's contribution, to bring it up to at least the poverty level. And unless they have subsidized housing,
yeah.
There's a lot of people with disabilities that are living on the street because they simply can't find affordable housing.
Right.
And
in today's rental market, one
horrible.
check doesn't even cover a month's rent, not even 1 month's rent.
And here's the weird thing about Sacramento. Sacramento is, I think, in the top 10 of cities in the United States where the real estate has gone up during COVID. It's gotten worse. It's gotten worse.
Yes.
And, I remember we had a mayor, Kevin Johnson, who had this great plan to build 10,000 homes or something like that. And it was going to be mixed, affordable and market rate. But of course, they built all the market rate ones first, and then never got around to building the affordable ones. And that happens all the time, and even our current mayor talks about it. And right now, I'm so disillusioned when it comes to building affordable housing that I'll believe it when I see it. And I'm not going to hold my breath, yeah.
And then don't even get started on accessible affordable housing.
That takes it to a whole nother level.
Yeah.
I remember when I was first beginning to work with my colleagues in affordable housing, working to get them to say affordable and accessible, because it's an easy one to drop, right? It's an easy one to drop. And even I forget sometimes to throw the word accessible in there because it could be affordable and completely inaccessible. I remember we were working with one fella. He was living in a place, and I don't know why they did this, but the person who owned the building removed the stairs to get into the building. We ended up advocating for him. He got a lift that would go from the ground level to take him up to where the door was, because they'd removed the stairs for some reason. I just never could understand that. But it is funny how people how people think about other people with disabilities and how they perceive them, and they're so inspirational, and I don't know how they're doing it and all that stuff. And yet they don't feel that way about themselves. And we do objectify them, and no one should be objectified.
Right.
And I think for me, it was working with people with disabilities, providing services with people with disabilities. Every year we had there was a gathering, a legislative day at the Capitol, where people with disabilities from all over California would come to California, would come to Sacramento, and you'd see all these various disabilities and how they're managing that disability so they can participate, in this legislative process. Things I had no idea were out there, and it's also a lucrative business for people to provide those access means. It's very, very lucrative. Anyway, Cheryl, we are going to have another hour with this. We'll have to strategize a little more as to how we're getting our graphics and photos up and everything. And but I love, this is a big part of my life for over 10 years. So I love talking about this.
Me too.
And yeah, so
Thanks
we'll
for
do
the
this
opportunity.
again. So thanks for coming on. Thank you for everyone that participated this evening with It's Not About Me, It's About Us. And thank you for all of you who are viewing this recording. I hope you can join us for a live show every Thursday night at 7 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. So until next week, let's see if I can do this without ending the broadcast first. Cheryl, I'll talk with you later. Oh, hang on, and we'll talk after this, okay?
All right.